Two teenagers charged with the murder of a 12-year-old New Albany girl went to a punk rock concert just hours before the murder of Shanda Sharer. And on an earlier newscast, we showed you a video of a punk rock group believed to be...
Honestly, I mean, she knows what she was getting into. I didn't do nothing to her that she didn't want me to. What they may call intimate, we wasn't intimate like that. Not like a male and female was intimate.
Lori Tackett, a teenager who admits she tortured and murdered a 12-year-old, now says she was scared to go get help during the night the child was suffering. It was almost a year ago that Shanda Sharer was killed near Madison, Indiana. Two teenagers have admitted to it.
Lori gave a statement to a crime library reporter who was asking her why someone would kill. Here's what she said. She said, quote, "Let's say, for instance, I know a couple of people who kill simply for the fear that they see in their victims' eyes and for the sight of the blood on their bodies. My opinion is they do it to feel superior or high on the victim."
Tomorrow, a woman who helped commit one of this area's most heinous crimes will walk out of prison. Hope Rippey's sentence was shortened by a northern Indiana judge. She pleaded guilty to the 1992 murder of Shanda Sharer. The 12-year-old girl was brutally beaten, tortured, and sodomized, and then burned alive. WHS.
In today's episode, we're discussing a truly disturbing case from 1992 that involves jealousy, betrayal, and the lengths that teenagers will go to in order to get revenge. Shanda Sharer was just 12 years old when her life was tragically cut short by people she thought were her friends. This case shocked the nation when the grisly details emerged of what a group of teenage girls did to poor Shanda. Their twisted actions are difficult to comprehend, but this story needs to be told. Let's start at the beginning. Shanda Sharer was born in June of 1979 in Pineville, Kentucky. Her parents, Stephen and Jacqueline, were madly in love when Shanda came into the world. But sadly, their marital bliss didn't last. The details are fuzzy, but at some point when Shanda was young, Stephen and Jacqueline divorced. Jacqueline soon remarried and moved with Shanda to Louisville, where the bright young girl attended St. Paul's School for 5th and 6th grade. Shanda thrived at St. Paul, quickly making lots of friends and joining the volleyball team, softball team, and cheerleading squad. She seemed destined for greatness. But that all changed when Jacqueline divorced yet again, for reasons unclear. This time, Jacqueline pulled Shanda from St. Paul and transferred her to Hazelwood Middle School in New Albany, Indiana, reportedly to be closer to Shanda's biological dad in Kentucky. Starting at a new school is anxiety-inducing for any kid. But for Shanda, having to switch schools and make new friends for the second time in just a few years must have been especially difficult. Unfortunately, Hazelwood didn't provide the warm welcome she was used to. Just days into the school year, Shanda got into a fistfight with a girl named Amanda Hevron. Both girls ended up in detention for the dust-up. But a funny thing happened while sitting side by side in detention. Shanda and Amanda realized they had a lot in common. To Jacqueline's surprise, her daughter had made fast friends with the very girl she'd brawled with earlier that week. However, Jacqueline soon noticed something peculiar about Shanda and Amanda's blossoming friendship. The girls passed intimate notes in class, with Amanda asking Shanda if she liked girls. It became apparent that Shanda and Amanda were more than just friends. Before long, Shanda and Amanda were in a full-blown secret relationship.
Did you have a sexual relationship with her?
Yes.
Did you think that because she was only 12 that it wasn't a good idea?
I mean, she was seeing boys older than me, so obviously, I mean, she knows what she was getting into. I didn't do nothing to her that she didn't want me to. What they may call intimate, we wasn't intimate like that. Not like a male and female was intimate.
Did you know that Melinda had made...
They even attended a school dance together, which was pretty daring for two young girls in socially conservative Indiana in 1992. Everything seemed peachy for the new couple until the dance, when Shanda met a jealous ex-girlfriend of Amanda's named Melinda Loveless. At 16 years old, Melinda had dated 14-year-old Amanda for about a year until recently breaking up. But Melinda was far from over the relationship. In her mind, she and Amanda were just on a break. So when Melinda saw her ex happily dancing with 12-year-old Shanda, she felt betrayed. Melinda began to threateningly warn Shanda to stay away from Amanda. You see, Melinda viewed Shanda as an undesirable copycat, stealing away her girlfriend. Melinda's jealousy consumed her, and she was out for vengeance. Melinda's turbulent home life certainly didn't help matters. Around this time, Melinda's father abandoned the family, and her mother quickly moved on with a new man. On top of that, Melinda and her older sisters recently came out as gay to their unsuspecting mother. Though eventually accepting, Melinda's mom was initially upset by the news. With Melinda's family life in shambles, she felt utterly betrayed. Amanda dating Shanda was the last straw. Melinda's anger teetered dangerously close to violence. By fall 1991, Melinda made public threats that she planned to end Shanda's life. Amanda turned over Melinda's threatening letters to the local youth prosecutor, but officials failed to act. Tensions rose through the end of 1991. Then, on January 10, 1992, Melinda put her murderous plans into action. She invited 3 friends over: Lori Tackett, Hope Rippey, and Tony Lawrence. Melinda revealed her plot to kill Shanda with a knife, aiming to scare her away from Amanda permanently. Shanda was staying at her dad's house that weekend in nearby Jeffersonville. So late that night, the 4 girls drove over, concocting a scheme to lure Shanda into the car. When they arrived at Shanda's house, 2 girls knocked on the door, claiming Amanda had sent them to pick up Shanda for a meetup. Although hesitant, they persuaded Shanda to sneak out around midnight. Melinda hid in the back seat under a blanket, clutching her weapon. Once Shanda was in the car, Melinda pressed the knife to her throat, interrogating her about Amanda. The girls drove with the captive Shanda to an abandoned building locals called the Witch's Castle. Once there, Melinda tied up Shanda, stole her jewelry, and cut off her hair, taunting her the whole time. Terrified, Shanda was then loaded back into the car and driven to Madison, near where Lori lived. They turned down a remote logging road surrounded by trees. In the dark woods, Shanda was forced to strip naked before Melinda unleashed her fury, beating and stabbing the helpless girl. Although 2 frightened friends stayed in the car, the other 2 helped hold Shanda down during the savage attack. Later that night, they returned to Melinda's house to clean up and drink. Hearing Shanda's faint screams from the trunk, Lori grabbed a knife and silenced her for good. After cruising the country backroads, the murderous girls found Shanda still clinging to life. They doused her in gasoline and lit her battered body ablaze. A coroner would later confirm that Shanda was alive when set on fire. But to her attackers, their gruesome deed was done. Can you imagine how Amanda felt the next day when Melinda gleefully confessed it all, taking her to view Shanda's handprints in the trunk? Amanda was sworn to secrecy, forced to act normal in spite of the barbaric slaughter of a young girl she once loved. Meanwhile, Shanda's frantic parents filed a missing person report. Tragically, their worst fears were confirmed when 2 guilt-ridden girls told police everything.
2 teenagers charged with the murder of a 12-year-old New Albany girl went to a punk rock concert just hours before the murder of Shanda Sharer. And on an earlier newscast, we showed you a video of a punk rock group believed to be Sunspring. It was not. This is the musical group called Sunspring. They say their music has no violent message and does not influence violence. Members of the band say tying their music to the murder suspects is ridiculous.
No, of course it didn't play a part, I don't think, because, our music has nothing to do with, violent feelings or anything like that.
I'd consider it possibly just a coincidence that they were at the show, and that had no effect on what they were really feeling.
Jason Hayden says he recalls seeing murder suspect Melinda Loveless at some of their earlier concerts, but says you can hardly use music to justify murder.
Shanda's charred remains were identified through dental records. Melinda and Lori were swiftly arrested, with the other 2 girls already in custody. By September, Melinda and Lori both accepted plea deals, each sentenced to 60 years behind bars.
One of Kentuckiana's most horrific murders, a 12-year-old girl, Shanda Sharer, lured into a car and then murdered by a group of girls, beaten, her body set on fire in 1992. One of the ringleaders now released from prison. Only one other woman remains there. Our Holden Kerwicki joining us with the history of this awful case. I remember it well, Holden.
And this is a case that, regardless if you're from here or not, it's really a story that generations of people around these parts really remember. And 26 years ago yesterday, 12-year-old Shanda Sharer was kidnapped, tortured, and killed by teens Tony Lawrence, Hope Rippey, Lori Taggett, and Melinda Loveless, because Loveless had convinced the group that the 12-year-old Sharer was trying to steal her girlfriend. As Lori Taggett was released from prison today, we take a look back at how her parents have dealt with the loss of their daughter through the years.
Please love your children. Please love every second you have with your children. Never think that they know you love them. Always tell them you love them. Always watch over them, make sure they're safe, know where they're at, who they're with, and never take them for granted.
The 1992 murder of then 12-year-old Shanda Sharer is a moment that will stick with her mother, Jackie, for the rest of her life, as she told us at this 2009 memorial.
She will always be that little girl, you know, that sweet child, because she was still just a baby.
It's an image many in Kentuckiana remember. Young girls being walked into the courthouse in Madison, Indiana. One of those girls, now 43-year-old Lori Taggett, walked out of jail on the 26th anniversary of the murder. Through the years, Jackie and Shanda's father, Steve, told WHAS 11 they had trouble wrapping their heads around how 4 teens, ringleader Melinda Loveless, Tony Lawrence, and Hope Rippey, could commit such a savage act as kidnapping, torturing, and eventually killing their daughter.
Anybody doing what they did to another human being, it's just so far out in left field that it just doesn't make sense to do something that terrible to another person.
There are days when it just like is a knife that goes in my chest. I'll look at a picture and then I just have to start thinking pleasant thoughts.
While 3 of her daughter's killers have now been released from prison, Jackie has told WHAS 11 that she finds peace in the memories of her daughter.
I know in my heart where she's at. I know she's with God, and I know that she's fine. And I know that she'll never feel pain again, and I know that I'll be with her again.
And if she could tell her daughter one thing...
I miss you. I miss you so much.
Melinda Loveless is the only one of Shanda's murderers who are still behind bars. She's scheduled to be released in September of 2019.
But shockingly, they served only 25 and 26 years before release. As for the other girls, Hope got 35 years, serving just 14.
Again, thank you. Tomorrow, a woman who helped commit one of this area's most heinous crimes will walk out of prison. Hope Rippey's sentence was shortened by a northern Indiana judge. She pleaded guilty to the 1992 murder of Shanda Sharer. The 12-year-old girl was brutally beaten, tortured, and sodomized, and then burned alive. WHAS 11's Melissa Swan interviewed Shanda's mother, Jackie Vaught, and she's here with us. She says it's a miscarriage of justice. Melissa?
Doug, Hope Rippey's original sentence was cut by at least 5 years. She was 15 when she committed the crimes. Since then, she's earned a college degree and she's been on good behavior, but that judge cut the sentence for other qualities. Qualities Shanda Sharer's mother says she can't believe a killer like Rippey could possess.
I'm really angry about this. This is wrong. This is a battle I've been fighting for years.
Jackie Vaught has known it was coming for many months. Hope Rippey, one of the teenagers who tortured and killed her daughter, is getting out of prison tomorrow.
I try very hard to not be angry. I try very hard to have some dignity.
Vaught has attended 3 sentence modification hearings for Rippey, each time facing Rippey in court with this message.
If you're truly remorseful, serve your time. That's all I ask.
And every time she recounts her daughter's horrible 10-hour torture, her death, and Rippey's involvement.
She was the one that poured the gasoline on Shanda. They had earlier stabbed her in her feet and her legs, and Hope took Windex and sprayed it in her open wounds.
She could have saved her life.
They all could have saved her life many times that night. There were so many opportunities.
In this court order to modify Rippey's sentence, prison officials and doctors said she had, quote, no character disorder, and recommended the earliest possible release from incarceration.
She's normal.
that she's sincere, likable, earnest, ethical, that we're now depriving society of a potential asset. That's what I had to listen to. She tried to take more action, sending this letter to officials and news outlets in northern Indiana where a prosecutor had agreed to the sentence modification hearing without Vaught's knowledge. These guys murdered my child. And I don't have any say on whether or not we agree to a modification hearing. It's wrong. The response? Nothing. Never heard a word. She ultimately had to accept that Hope Rippey would be released early. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in the whole system. Jackie Vaught has been a victim's advocate in the Floyd County Prosecutor's Office and still talks to groups about her daughter's murder. Just yesterday, she talked to a teenager about the dangers that girl might be facing, and she says she doesn't seek out people. They often come to her, and she'll never say no. Doug?
While Tony served only 9 of her 20-year sentence. In the end, I don't know what to make of this horrific crime. Melinda had a dark upbringing, but her actions are inexcusable. Lori Tackett hadn't even met Shanda before joining in her sadistic murder. And yet, she served less time than Shanda lived on this earth. The justice system failed Shanda Sharer. While her killers are now free, Shanda's life was cut tragically short at just 12 years old. This chilling case reminds us that a group mentality and pack behavior can drive seemingly normal teens to commit unfathomable brutality. Shanda's story illustrates how jealousy and perceived betrayal can breed unimaginable violence, especially in the minds of young people struggling with their own identities. The only silver lining is the hope that such a savage crime has forced the perpetrators to reform their twisted psyches. Perhaps they can still salvage some decency out of their broken lives. But they should count their blessings to be free, because Shanda Sharer never got that chance. This concludes today's episode about the haunting murder of Shanda Sharer.